commentary on this week's Parshas Shmiini, something very nice from the Rebbe's father, Rabbi Yitzchok Zatzal. In the end of this week's Parsha, the Torah describes that there are like 8 shrotzim, a rat, a mouse, and if they're dead and they touch a vessel, the vessel becomes tummy. You have to toivel in the mikvah. And then the Torah describes what kind of vessel. So it says like this: kli eitz, a vessel that's made out of wood. Then it says oil, if it's made out of leather, and or beged, or garment. And then the Torah says a 4th type, oisok, a sack. A sack is a specific type of vessel. So first the Torah says general ones, if it's made out of leather or it's made out of any type of wooden vessel. So why does the Torah have to specifically say a sack? You know, I would understand a sack is made usually out of garments or whatever, however the sack is made, if it's leather. Why specifically does the Torah describe sack? Now the Gemara asks this question many places in Shas, and it answers a very interesting answer. It says, when the Torah first says, if you have a garment, or if you have a vessel, or something made out of leather, it doesn't tell you the size. It could be a giant vessel that become impure. Learns the Gemara, no, sack. A sack has an interesting criteria, and that is, it's used when it's empty, and it can be used when it's full. When it's full, we fill it up with grain, or we fill it up with fruit, a full sack of food. When it's empty, we use it for something which is for the mourning period, M-O-U-R-N-A-N-G. As we find in Chumash, Yaakov Avinu, when he heard that Yosef was away, by Yisabel, he mourned upon him, and it says he took a garment, he took a sack, and he put it on his waist. In the Megillah we have Mordechai, when the decree came out, he wore a sack. So a sack has an interesting dual process. On one hand, when it's empty, it's reikon, you use it for something of sadness. When it's full, it brings life. It brings chayim. Usually you fill up sacks with food. And we find also in Chumash right away by Yosef and his brothers, he told them, fill up your sacks with food, with grain, and go back home to Yaakov. So here the Gemara learns an interesting thing. You know what type of vessel becomes impure? Only if it's similar to a sack, which means only if the vessel is used by the person. You can move it around, it's full, it's empty, but it's in your reach, just like a sack. But if it's a vessel that's made to be stationed, osu lenachas, it's so big that's out of your reach of your hand, so to say, tfises yad. You can't reach it, or it's not movable through the man's power, then it's out of your realm, and even if a dead rat touches it, it doesn't become puzzle. It doesn't become tummy, impure. Now, everything in Torah is exact. Ask Rebbe Levi. So why is the source for this law? That when does impurity fall in or can have an effect? It's only something which is similar to a sack, which means that it's in the realm of a person, that a person could fill it up, or if it's empty. And also, if it's empty, it's used for something negative, if it's for death, so to say, or mourning. If it's full, it brings life. Why is the reason of we learn it out from sack? And also the letters sok, it says in this week's Parsha, a sin and a kuf. Everything is exact. There's so many details about this. I'm only going to touch a little bit about it because there's pages and pages from the Rebbe's father on this subject. So first explains from Rabbi Yitzchok like this. And he says the whole concept of impurity, we understand, is only by a person. Things that belong to Hashem, there's no impurity. And it's similar to the concept we learn if a person makes an avodah zarah, if a person makes an idol worship. So the laws of idol worship is only if a person builds something, let's say, takes some rocks and he builds a whole structure and he bows down to it, then it becomes like avodah zarah and no one can benefit from it. But what happens if a person bows down to a mountain? the mountain doesn't become impure, or a person can benefit from it. Everyone could benefit from it. What's the difference? The difference is that when a person takes stones and rocks in his own hand, that means it becomes into the person's realm. That's when you have purity and impurity. You can make something impure, and if someone bows down to it, it becomes a avodah and you can't benefit from it. But something that belongs to Hashem, like we say, Shemaim Hashem, Yodam. If it's out of your realm, you can't even move it or touch it or build it. That person can't make a mountain. Then it belongs to Hashem and it's pure. Just like same thing also. You have many goyim that they bow down to the sun and the moon. It doesn't affect the sun and the moon that we can't benefit from it just because some people want to make it avodah zarah. The rule of avodah zarah is only impurity, only falls in the category if it enters into the realm of man, as tfisas yad. And this is what we learn out from sak. A sak is also, here's the interesting thing, if it's empty, it's used for something impure, which means death, mourning, a sadness. That's when it's empty. When it's full, that's when it brings life. And this is the general avodah of a yid. This teaches us, says Rebbe Yitzchok. Every yid, after Rebbe says in Tanya, there's oil and keli, there's light, and then there's the vessel. The world itself is like a vessel. It's empty, and it has no holiness to it, because Hashem brought it in this world. He concealed himself. And our job is to bring light, to bring life, chayim, into all the vessels. And this is the general idea, that when does a vessel become impure? Only if it enters into the person's realm. So you have purity and impurity, and you could use out every vessel for good things, like a sack. You could fill it up for life. You could bring grain and food, and you could add goodness in the world, or sometimes it could be negative. And that's a person which he has up and down, goodness, negative, holiness and impurity, etc. But if it belongs totally to Hashem, and any vessel that you cannot move around, also lenachas, that means it's out of your realm, it doesn't become impure. Now here comes Rabbi Levi, who says a very interesting thing. He hints it in the letters of Sin and Kuf. He says the letter Sin and Kuf is interesting in Aleph Beis. Sometimes you have letters that have like 2 feet, like an Aleph. When you write it, it has 2 feet on the bottom. A Beis has a long foot on the bottom. But a Sin, the way it's written in the Torah, comes down to a point. A Kuf also has 1 leg that comes down. So both the Sin and a Kuf have like 1 leg. It's brought down in Zoya. Reb Shimon ben Yochai told his students that how long is it going to be that we're only going to stand on 1 foot? It's called Chad Samcha, only on 1 leg. And it explains the Chassidus very, very much. That's the difference between, in general, the world of tikkun and the world of toyu. The world of chaos, which you can have impurity, symbolizes only 1 leg. However, the world of goodness and kindness, over there you're standing on 2 legs. And the meaning of that is like this. In general, that's the difference between when a person follows himself based on instinct, emotion. And if a person just follows his emotions, sometimes he'll have a feeling of kindness, of love, chesed, and sometimes he'll have severity, gvura. And in emotions, you can't really have a balance and a blend between the two. Only if you have seichel. Torah teaches us, Torah is sholem, Torah is peaceful. It teaches us how to have the blend of chesed and gvura. Hashem is not only kindness, Hashem is not only severity. There's a balance between them, and that's the 2 feet. In Klippa, there's only 1 leg. A person, if he follows just his emotional feelings without the knowledge of Torah and what teaches you how to balance good and bad, or holiness and impurity together, then you're standing on 1 leg. And that's when you follow your instincts. That's an animal. A human being was given Torah, and he has over there 2 feet. Hashem says, I teach you. Sometimes you'll have chesed, you'll have gvura, you'll have kindness, and you'll have severity. Ava and Yira together, and there's a balance. And that's the 2 feet. And this is what Hashem wants to show you. Know where you have impurity, where you have toyu, and you can bring impurity only like a sok, only like these 2 letters, a sin and a kuf. We have only 1 leg. and you're not balanced. You're wobbling back and forth. Holiness, non-holiness. But where you want to bring holiness, over there you're standing on 2 feet, and that's why the source of this law. Now, when can you have impurity? Is only when you're wobbling. You're standing on 1 foot, like a sin and a kuf. The tziyur, the design of the letter shows that. But where you have 2 feet, then this is the way of the Torah. This is the world of tikkun, and this brings that we should erase all the negative from the world. There won't be any purity. The whole world will become part of Hashem, and Hashem is only goodness and kindness with the coming of Mashiach speedily nowadays.